What's happening, folks? Back with another reaction, back with some more of The Cure, and we're returning to the top, 1984. Thank you again to Phil for providing the larger catalog. And the next track is The Caterpillar. So it's very specific, a caterpillar, a segmented insect. I wonder whether that segmentation and multi-part body might factor into some metaphor, some figurative meaning. Of course, it could be a visual reference. It could be the narrator is witnessing a caterpillar and watching it move in its peculiar way, and or seeing some of itself in the animal. But yes, ultimately I do wonder whether there's some figurative meaning at play here. Let's give it a listen. This is The Cure, the track is The Caterpillar, and it's from the 1984 album The Top. What an interesting tune. So sonically, it's a really dynamic one in that at the beginning and later in the middle of the track, there's a real discordant, almost alien type of feel, which if we're using the metaphor of a caterpillar, and more on that because it was more extensive than I thought coming, but yes, if we're using that as a metaphor and a figurative visual reference, then it makes sense that a lot of the sounds, including, I think, the drum rhythms, maybe some castanets, even Smith's vocals, have this very rapid and clattery type of feel to them. And so, yes, the idea of many feet of a caterpillar all sort of tapping and moving along at once, I think that is perhaps conceptually represented in multiple aspects of the sonics. But I wasn't thinking about the chrysalis into a butterfly, which seems to be the real pivotal part of the song thematically, meaning, as with many other Cure songs, he talks about his, what was it, not, was it Empty Heart? I think it was Empty Heart, but the idea of love being out of his grasp or out of his control and moving away from him and leaving him in this despairing state. So that seems to be present, again, as in a number of other songs, but in this case, specifically of the idea that, like, right when he was ready, right when he was capable of maybe having his heart filled and having this connection that could be significant, she made the chrysalis, turned into a butterfly with all her bright and colorful and ornate wings and flying away from him. So right at the moment when he could have had something beautiful that would make him feel warm and loved, that's the moment when she actually transforms into something else that's out of his grasp and flies away, leaving him in this state. But as I said, the opening of the tune and the middle of the tune, they had a bit of this discordant alien feel, which is fitting of insects, which by and large are so very different from our own anatomy and physiology and so on, that they just seem like these alien creatures that we happen to share a planet with. But then it went into this warmer and almost folk pop type of arrangement where we can hear a guitar, and indeed the guitar was another element that had this fast and very rapid fire type of feel, which made me think of caterpillar feet moving along. But still, in those sections after the opening and on either side of that interlude in the middle, it had this like natural instrument, almost folk jam kind of feel to it. So yeah, it seems like the song overall was less electronic sounding and certainly less post-punk sounding than the very earliest stuff. So it had this interesting folk pop type of arrangement with, again, a bit of discordant dissonance along the way. So sonically, more distinct in terms of being down a different path than at least a lot of the Cure stuff that I've heard, even from this period specifically. And Robert's vocals, while not quite as eccentric as in Dressing Up, certainly had a bit of a outside the lines flair and sort of like rising up almost like a butterfly at a couple points, as if he was, sort of being swept up by the wind and taking off, whereas before they were more grounded. So while they're still, of course, immediately identifiable as Smith's vocals, he's definitely playing around with some of his delivery here. And indeed, that's something multiple people commented on after the Dressing Up reaction, that, wow, that was a really eccentric performance from him vocally. But number one, he was sort of playing around with his vocal delivery in this phase. And I think a couple folks commented that, he may have been a bit inebriated in some of these recordings when he was experimenting with his vocal performance. But yeah, an eccentric tune, maybe less so than the previous one, but still a bit unexpected, a bit wild vocally, and a bit unique relative to some of their other material, even from this album and period, in terms of the sonics and the melody. So yeah, just a really interesting one. Let me know what you think, and I will see you next time. Peace.